Ever dealt with power-drunk HOAs who think the rules don't apply to them? Drop your story in the comments, because after what I'm about to tell you, you'll never look at a neighborhood association the same way again. The ICU was cold. Too cold. Or maybe it was just my blood that had turned to ice as I stood there, staring through the glass at my daughter's broken little body. Emma, my 5-year-old baby girl, lay motionless beneath a web of tubes and wires. A ventilator hissed in rhythm, forcing air into lungs too weak to work on their own. Bandages covered her head, white and clean, but I could see the bruises blooming beneath them, spreading like storm clouds under fragile skin. Her face was swollen beyond recognition. Only the tiny pink nail polish on her fingers reminded me that this was still my child. The heart monitor's steady beeping was the only sound that tethered me to the world. Proof of life, proof she was still fighting. I pressed my palms against the cold glass, and when I looked down, I saw the dark smudges under my nails. Dried blood. Emma's blood. The blood I'd tried to wipe away in the ambulance as I begged her to stay awake. I could still hear my own voice, raw and cracking, whispering her name over and over like a prayer I wasn't sure anyone was listening to. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the hallway, but underneath it was something else. Something metallic, like the ghost of blood and fear that clung to me no matter how many times I washed my hands. Behind me, someone spoke my name, soft and careful. "Mrs. Morrison." I turned. Dr. Patel stood there, his face pale and drawn. He was the kind of man who didn't rattle easily, but even he looked shaken. "We need to discuss your daughter's condition," he said. I couldn't look away from Emma. Couldn't make myself step into his office and hear the words that would make this nightmare real. My voice came out as a whisper. "Just tell me." He hesitated, and that hesitation said more than any chart ever could. "Multiple skull fractures," he began. "Severe brain trauma. Broken ribs, internal bleeding. We've managed to control most of it. Her left arm is fractured in 2 places and there's swelling near her spinal cord." He swallowed hard. "Sarah, your daughter was beaten. This wasn't an accident or a fall. Someone did this to her deliberately." For a moment, everything went silent. No heartbeat monitor. No ventilator. Just the sound of my pulse roaring in my ears. Beaten. My little girl, who loved butterflies and sidewalk chalk, had been beaten. I felt something inside me break, and in its place came a kind of calm I'd never known before. The kind of calm that comes before a storm. "The person who did this," I said quietly. "Where are they?" Dr. Patel looked away, as if afraid to meet my eyes. "The police said someone was arrested, but they've been released." My throat tightened. "Released? On bail? About 2 hours ago?" I turned to him then, slowly. Whatever he saw in my face made him step back. "How do you know that?" he asked, his voice unsteady. "Because," I said, my voice low and steady, "I'm the district attorney of Harris County." The words hung there between us, heavy and electric. He blinked, realization dawning. "Oh my God!" "Yes," I whispered, eyes fixed on Emma's still form. "And the woman who beat my daughter into a coma just made the biggest mistake of her life." I stepped closer to the glass, every nerve in my body burning with fury. I could almost see it now. The smirk on her face, the arrogance of someone who thought she was untouchable. She probably believed her husband, the well-connected judge, would make this all disappear. That she could twist the story, call it self-defense, and walk free. But she didn't know me. She didn't know the woman she'd just crossed. Because while I stood there watching my daughter fight for her life, I made a silent vow. One that would shake this entire community to its core. She will pay. Every second of it. Every bruise. Every tear. Every moment of pain she caused my child. The air hummed with the low buzz of machines, and for the first time since the ambulance, I allowed myself to breathe. Not because I felt calm, but because fury had replaced the fear. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. And as the beeping of the heart monitor continued its steady rhythm, I whispered to my unconscious daughter, She has no idea who she's dealing with. The image of Emma lying in that hospital bed never left my mind, not even as the hours blurred together under the harsh fluorescent lights. Every beep of the monitor pulled me deeper into the memory of the morning that had started so beautifully, so innocently, that it almost felt like it belonged to someone else's life. That Saturday had begun like a promise. The sun was already peeking through the blinds when Emma climbed onto my bed, her hair tangled, her purple dress slightly crooked, and her smile big enough to chase away the fatigue that had settled in my bones after another week of endless casework. "Mommy, wake up," she'd chirped, her voice bubbling with excitement. "You said no work today. You promised." And I had. For once, there were no calls, no files spread across the dining table, no courtrooms, just my daughter and me. All right, I'd laughed, pulling her into my arms. "What's first on the agenda?" "Pancakes, with chocolate chips," she said proudly, as if she'd invented the recipe herself. The kitchen smelled like home that morning, warm butter, sweet syrup, and coffee brewing on the counter. Emma had insisted on helping, of course. I can still see her standing on that little stool, stirring the batter with the oversized whisk, giggling every time she splattered flour on her nose. We danced to the radio while the pancakes sizzled on the pan. For that brief, perfect hour, life was nothing but laughter and sunlight. After breakfast, Emma ran to the porch, clutching her new bucket of sidewalk chalk. "Can I draw outside?" she asked. I hesitated for a second. Our HOA, Riverside Gardens, wasn't exactly known for tolerance. The board had rules for everything: how high your grass could grow, what color your shutters could be, even what time you could leave your garbage bins out. But sidewalk chalk? It was washable, harmless. Surely no one could complain about a 5-year-old's butterflies. "Go ahead, sweetheart," I told her, smiling. "Just stay where I can see you." From the front steps, I watched as Emma's imagination spilled across the gray concrete. Pink flowers, yellow suns, blue stick figures with impossible smiles. She hummed to herself while she worked, occasionally turning to ask if I liked her drawings. "It's perfect," I'd say every time. And it was. For a while, I even forgot about work. Forgot about the constant tension of keeping a public office. Forgot about everything except my little girl and her rainbow world. Then my phone rang. The display lit up with the mayor's office. I hesitated, glancing at Emma, who was now crouched over a chalk butterfly, carefully adding purple wings. 5 minutes, I told myself. Just a quick update on the case I'd been handling all week. I stepped inside, closing the door just enough to muffle the outside noise. 5 minutes, that's all. I remember the cool click of my heels on the kitchen tile, the low hum of the refrigerator, the way my voice echoed faintly off the walls as I spoke to the mayor's aide. It was nothing urgent, routine even. But beneath that calm conversation, something was happening outside that would destroy everything I loved. I didn't hear it at first, the shouting, the screaming. I was too focused on the call. But when the pitch of a woman's voice pierced through the walls, shrill and furious, every instinct in my body froze. I dropped the phone mid-sentence and ran for the door. The next few seconds are burned into my memory like fire. The sound of Emma's crying, the angry, venomous words from a voice I recognized all too well. The HOA president, Karen Whitmore, 45 years old, manicured, powerful and cruel, towering over my daughter, her face twisted with rage. Emma was on her knees, chalk scattered across the pavement, tears streaking down her cheeks as she stammered, "I'm sorry, I'll clean it up." Karen's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Sorry isn't good enough. Do you know how much the HOA pays for these sidewalks?" I was still halfway down the porch steps when Karen's hand shot out and grabbed Emma's arm. And that was the moment. The line between peace and horror. The 5 minutes that tore my world apart. By the time I reached the bottom of the porch steps, my voice was already breaking. "Hey, what's going on?" The scene before me didn't make sense at first. Chalk dust floating in the warm air, bright drawings smeared under angry footsteps. My daughter cowering while a grown woman loomed over her like a predator. Karen Whitmore was the kind of woman who believed she owned everything she could see. Perfect blonde bob, diamond earrings that glittered even in daylight. A white linen blouse too crisp for anything resembling kindness. She had that HOA president posture, chin lifted just enough to look down on you no matter how tall you were. Her husband was a judge, her brother the police chief, and she carried that power like a weapon. Right now her face was flushed a violent shade of red, her manicured hands clenched into fists. "Your daughter has vandalized HOA property," she shouted, voice sharp and cutting. "Do you have any idea what it costs to maintain these sidewalks?" I stopped halfway across the lawn, fighting to keep my voice steady. "It's sidewalk chalk, washable." "She's 5 years old." Karen's eyes snapped to me, blazing. "There are rules," she hissed. "She needs to learn to follow them." Her hand tightened around Emma's arm. My daughter whimpered, trying to pull away. "Let go of her," I said, my tone dropping to something low and dangerous. Karen's mouth curved into a cruel smile. "You need to control your child before someone gets hurt." I said, "Let her go." "Do you know who I am?" she spat, her voice trembling with fury. "I'm the president of this HOA, and your neighbor recorded this entire act of vandalism. I have proof." "I don't care if you're the Queen of England," I snapped. "You're not putting your hands on my daughter." For a split second, I thought she might back down. Instead, she smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that chilled me to the bone. "Make me." Before I could move, her hand flew across Emma's face. The crack of the slap sliced through the air, echoing down the street. Emma stumbled backward, her small body jerking from the impact, a bright red mark already blooming across her cheek. I screamed and ran, but Karen was faster. She grabbed Emma by her hair and yanked her upright. "You want to destroy property?" she snarled. "Then you'll learn about consequences." "Stop, she's a child." My voice tore from my throat, raw and panicked. Emma was crying now, gasping between sobs, her tiny hands clawing at Karen's grip. "I'm sorry. Please stop." Karen didn't stop. Her fist came down hard, once, twice, into Emma's stomach. The sound of the blows was sickening, like someone slamming a fist into wet fabric. Emma doubled over, choking, the breath knocked out of her. Then came another hit, this time to her face. Blood sprayed from her nose, splattering across the pale concrete, staining her drawings of butterflies and flowers. I was almost there, maybe 10 feet away, when Karen kicked her. The sound, God, that sound, of a crack that didn't belong in a child's body. Emma fell sideways, curling in on herself, her little arms trying to protect what she could. "Stop it!" I screamed, running full speed. But Karen wasn't finished. She lifted her foot and brought it down again, once, twice, into Emma's ribs. Then she bent down, grabbed my daughter by the back of her dress, and slammed her head against the concrete. Once, twice, 3 times. The chalk dust lifted in small clouds with each impact, a grotesque mix of color and red. "Emma!" I dropped to my knees beside her as Karen finally stepped back, breathing hard, her eyes wide but unrepentant. Emma's head lolled to the side, her eyes open but vacant. Blood was pooling under her hair, running down her temple, mixing with the pink chalk dust. Karen straightened her blouse, pulled out her phone, and spoke with terrifying calm. "Tom, it's Karen. I was attacked by a child. I had to defend myself. Bring your officers. I want this documented properly." Her brother, chief of police. My mind barely registered it. All I could do was press my hands to Emma's head, feeling the sticky warmth of her blood on my palms. Her breathing was shallow, uneven, and wrong. "Emma, baby, stay with me," I begged, my tears falling onto her face. "Please, stay with me." Karen turned and walked away, her designer heels clicking against the pavement, stepping over my daughter's chalk butterflies as if they were dirt. 5 minutes earlier, the world had been laughter and sunlight. Now it was blood, chalk, and silence. And my baby's breathing was shallow and wrong. The sound of sirens should have meant relief. They should have meant help was coming, that justice, or at least order, would finally step in to stop the nightmare unraveling on my front lawn. But as the red and blue lights flashed against the white siding of my house, painting the scene in pulsing color, a different kind of dread settled over me, because when I saw who stepped out of the patrol car, I knew this wasn't rescue. It was theater. Chief Thomas Hendris, Karen Whitmore's brother. Square-jawed, polished, the kind of man who thought his badge made him untouchable. I'd seen his type before. Men who wore power like armor and used it as a weapon. He was the last person I wanted anywhere near this investigation. He didn't even look at Emma at first. Didn't look at the blood pooling beneath her or the paramedics frantically working to stabilize her. His gaze went straight to his sister. "Karen," he said, voice sharp but not unkind. "What happened?" She played her part perfectly. Her eyes wide, voice trembling, she pointed toward me and my daughter. "That child, she attacked me. I tried to defend myself. It all happened so fast. She came at me with the chalk, threw it in my face. I panicked." Her words were smooth, rehearsed. I could almost hear the years of practice behind that performance. The calm of someone who'd been protected her entire life. "That's a lie!" I screamed, still kneeling beside Emma as the EMTs loaded her tiny body onto the stretcher. "You beat my daughter. She's 5 years old." Chief Hendris didn't flinch. He just sighed, turned to one of his officers and said, "Get statements from the witnesses." Witnesses? I looked around. Several of our neighbors had gathered, whispering among themselves, phones out. One of them, Steve Wilcox, was holding up his phone, looking anywhere but at me. He lived 3 doors down and happened to be the HOA's treasurer. Karen's ally, her inner circle. When the officers approached him, he didn't hesitate. "I saw it happen," he said quickly. "The little girl threw something at Karen. She was aggressive. Karen was just trying to protect herself." Aggressive. My 5-year-old, who still slept with her stuffed rabbit and cried when she saw a bee, was suddenly aggressive. I felt something deep inside me snap, but I forced myself to stay composed. Every instinct as a mother wanted to scream, to fight, but every instinct as a prosecutor told me to watch, to listen, to remember. When the EMTs lifted Emma into the ambulance, I climbed in beside her, clutching her hand. Her skin was pale, her breathing shallow, the monitor next to her beeping erratically. "Please," I whispered to the paramedic, "just keep her alive." At the hospital, I expected detectives to follow up, to question me, to gather real evidence. But instead, it was Chief Hendris himself who arrived, clipboard in hand, sympathy painted across his face like cheap makeup. "Mrs. Morrison," he said in that controlled, patronizing tone I'd heard too many times in courtrooms, "we need your statement about the incident." I stood up so fast the chair clattered to the floor. "You mean the attack?" I snapped. "Your sister beat my daughter into a coma. You need to arrest her." He didn't even blink. "My sister defended herself against an aggressive child. We have witnesses. Your daughter attacked first." The calmness of his voice made it worse, like this was already a closed case, a box neatly checked off. "That's a lie," I said, my voice shaking. "She's 5. Karen beat her because of chalk drawings." Chief Hendris looked down at his clipboard, pretending to take notes. "We've also recovered video evidence," he said. "Footage from a ring camera nearby. It supports my sister's account." "What footage?" I demanded. He hesitated, just long enough to confirm my suspicion. "The footage shows your daughter throwing something at Mrs. Whitmore," he said finally. "Then Mrs. Whitmore reacts defensively, and your daughter unfortunately falls and hits her head." "Edited," I said quietly. "You edited it." "Mrs. Morrison," he warned, tone tightening. "I understand you're upset, but accusing law enforcement of evidence tampering is a serious matter. So is beating a child into a coma," I shot back. "So is lying under oath, obstructing justice, and protecting your family from the consequences of their crimes." For a moment, the mask slipped. His jaw clenched, his eyes hardened. Then he straightened, putting the mask back in place. "I'm following the evidence," he said flatly. You'd be wise to let the investigation proceed without interference. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. He turned away. We're done here, he said, motioning for his officers to leave. They walked out of that hospital like nothing had happened, leaving behind the smell of antiseptic and betrayal. I stood there in the hallway staring through the glass at Emma's room. Her small body was covered in wires and tubes, her head wrapped in bandages, the rhythmic beeping of the machines keeping time with my heartbeat. They thought they could twist this, that their money, their titles, their alliances would bury the truth. They thought a 5-year-old's voice could be silenced because she couldn't speak for herself. But they'd made one fatal mistake. They'd underestimated who they were dealing with. Because I wasn't just a grieving mother, I was the district attorney. I'd put men twice as powerful as Chief Hendress behind bars, and now I would tear apart every lie they'd built brick by brick, until the whole rotten structure of their corruption came crashing down on top of them. As I pressed my palm to the glass between me and my daughter, I made a silent promise. This wasn't going to end the way they thought. They believed they could bury this. They had no idea what was coming. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The steady beep of the ICU monitor echoed in my head long after I'd left the hospital, each sound a reminder that my little girl was alive, but barely. The moment I saw her eyelids flutter under the harsh fluorescent lights, I made myself a promise. If the system wanted to protect Karen Whitmore, then I would become the system's reckoning. By the time the clock struck midnight, I was already driving through the empty streets of downtown Houston, the glow of my dashboard painting my hands in cold blue light. I pulled into the underground parking beneath the district attorney's office, swiped my badge, and stepped into the silent building I knew better than my own home. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I walked down the corridor toward my office. Every step echoed like a vow. My assistant, James Chin, was already there waiting. Word had spread fast through the courthouse grapevine. He looked up when I walked in, his face drawn and pale. "Sarah," he said softly. "I heard. How's Emma?" I didn't answer right away. My voice felt too heavy, my throat too tight. Finally I said, "She's in a coma. Multiple skull fractures, broken ribs, a shattered arm. All because that woman decided a child's chalk drawings offended her." I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. "But I'm not letting them bury this, James. Not this time." He hesitated. "You know you can't prosecute this yourself. It's a conflict of interest." I looked up, meeting his eyes. "Watch me." James sighed, but he didn't argue. He knew me well enough to recognize the steel in my tone. "Then we do it by the book," he said. "No shortcuts, no gray areas." "Exactly," I replied. "I'll invite oversight. The State Attorney General's office will monitor every move I make. Complete transparency. I'll file every motion, every warrant, every subpoena by procedure so perfect that removing me would raise more questions than keeping me on." The words steadied me. For the first time since the attack, I felt control returning. Icy, focused, deliberate control. "I'm not going to fight them with emotion," I said quietly. "I'm going to fight them with law. And I'm going to win." James leaned forward. "Where do we start?" I turned the laptop toward him, pulling up the initial police report. "Here. Look at this garbage. They're claiming Emma attacked first. That's their foundation, but it's built on lies. Edited footage, coached witnesses, falsified statements. I want every shred of it exposed." There was a knock at the door. When I looked up, Detective Marcus Hayes stood in the doorway. Tall, broad-shouldered, still in plain clothes, but with the kind of presence that filled the room. He'd worked with my office for years. One of the few officers I trusted implicitly. "Sarah," he said quietly, stepping inside. "I heard about Emma. I don't even know what to say." "Say you'll help me find the truth," I replied. His jaw tightened. "Anything you need." I turned my screen toward him. "They're saying she attacked Karen Whitmore. They have witnesses. They have a Ring camera video. I need to know where the lies start." Marcus pulled out a notepad, already thinking 10 steps ahead. "You want me to handle this off the record?" "No," I said firmly. On the record, everything above board, every interview recorded, every piece of evidence logged with timestamps and chain of custody. I want this investigation so clean that even the Attorney General can't find a single crack. Marcus nodded. Then we start tonight. He was good, one of the best. While I combed through digital evidence requests, he made calls to every resident in Riverside Gardens. Within hours, we had names, people who'd been there, people who might have seen something. Some refused to talk, terrified of the Whitmores, but a few were willing. By 3 a.m., my office walls were covered in sticky notes and photos. Karen's smiling HOA portrait pinned beside a printout of the police report. Underneath it, the word self-defense circled in red. It was a lie that had held up for years, a shield she'd used to justify her cruelty. But this time, that shield was cracking. James came back with coffee. You realize if you're right about the footage being doctored, he said, that means the chief of police personally tampered with evidence. I looked up, eyes cold. Then we take him down too. For a long moment the three of us stood there, the weight of it hanging between us. A child in a coma. A powerful family protected by corruption. And me, an exhausted mother with nothing left to lose. James finally broke the silence. What's the next move? I opened a blank case file on my computer and typed in a new title. State v. Karen Whitmore. Attempted murder of a minor. Then I turned to Marcus. Find the real footage. Talk to the homeowners. Pull every Ring camera, every witness, every 911 call. They've built a wall of lies around her. Tear it apart, brick by brick. Marcus nodded, his expression grim. I'll start tonight. As the first light of dawn seeped through the blinds, I stood by the window overlooking the city I'd sworn to protect. Somewhere across town, Karen Whitmore was sleeping comfortably in her mansion, convinced her power would save her. She didn't know that while she slept I was preparing the storm that would end her. They think they've won, I said softly, more to myself than anyone else. They think their connections will protect them. James looked up from his notes. But? I turned back to him, my voice low and sharp. But they don't know who they're dealing with. Outside, the first sunbeam hit the courthouse steps and the city woke to another day. But for the Whitmores, dawn was the beginning of their downfall. Find what they're hiding, I told Marcus, and tear apart their lies. The next 48 hours blurred into a haze of caffeine, rage, and relentless motion. My office, usually a place of order and logic, had become a war room. Case files littered the floor, legal pads filled with scribbled notes covered my desk, and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights pressed against my temples. Every hum, every flicker of the computer screen reminded me that time was running out, and my daughter was still fighting for her life. Detective Marcus Hayes barely slept. He'd made it his personal mission to tear through every piece of the false narrative the Whitmores had built. His desk sat opposite mine, covered in evidence bags, USB drives, and police reports. I could hear the faint rhythm of his pen tapping against the wood as he muttered to himself, connecting dots that others had tried to erase. Start with the footage, I told him. That's their foundation. If we can prove it's been tampered with, everything else collapses. He nodded and pulled up the file on his laptop. The same Ring camera video Chief Hendricks had used to justify releasing his sister. They didn't even do a good job hiding it, Marcus said, scrolling frame by frame. Look here, timestamp jumps, missing audio, and they cropped out half the scene. It's a bad edit. I leaned in closer. Can you prove it? He smiled grimly. Already did. I sent the file to our digital forensics team. Their analysis came back. Frames removed, audio replaced, metadata altered. Whoever edited this knew enough to make it look clean to the untrained eye, but not enough to fool me. My pulse quickened. Who owns this camera? He clicked open a document. David Chin, software engineer, lives 2 houses down from you. Funny thing, he filed a complaint 2 days ago saying the chief took his camera's SD card and returned it with corrupted footage. I think we found our smoking gun. Within an hour, Marcus and I were sitting in David Chin's living room. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days, dark circles under his eyes, frustration in every word. I told them what I saw, he said. Your daughter was just drawing. That woman, Karen, walked up screaming, grabbed her, and started hitting her. I yelled, but she ignored me. Then the chief took my camera, said it was for evidence. When I got it back, the footage was shorter and the audio was gone. Would you testify to that? I asked quietly. Under oath, on camera, however you need, he said without hesitation. What they did was wrong. By the time we returned to the office, Marcus was on the phone again, his deep voice steady but urgent. Yeah, that's right. Riverside Gardens, 2 joggers. They were in the area during the incident. He covered the receiver and looked at me. We've got witnesses. They saw the whole thing. They said Karen was beating your daughter, and when they tried to step in, she threatened to have them arrested for trespassing. Get their statements. Sworn, recorded, notarized, I said. He nodded, already dialing again. Hours passed. The sun went down, came up, and went down again. My office windows turned into mirrors, reflecting the exhaustion in my own eyes. Somewhere behind the glass, the city kept moving, oblivious to the storm brewing in one small corner of it. The hum of computers filled the silence. The clack of keys, the rustle of paper, the quiet rage of justice in motion. Marcus came in around midnight with a file in hand. You might want to sit down for this one. He opened the folder and spread photos and reports across my desk. I dug into Karen's history. This isn't her first time. I frowned. What do you mean? He slid a page toward me. 7 years ago, a 6-year-old boy in her old neighborhood broke his arm after she confronted him about riding his bike on the sidewalk. Parents signed an NDA, case closed. 4 years ago, a teenage boy ended up hospitalized after she claimed he tried to attack her with a skateboard. That case was sealed and expunged by, guess who? Judge Richard Whitmore. I stared at the papers, fury curling inside me like smoke. She's been doing this for years. Yep, Marcus said grimly. And every time, her husband or brother cleaned it up. Paid off families, buried evidence. They made her untouchable. Not anymore, I whispered. He handed me another sheet. HOA complaint records. And it gets worse. Dozens of complaints from neighbors. Verbal abuse, threats, intimidation. All quietly dismissed by the HOA board. She's been terrorizing that community for years. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. The air in the room felt too thick to breathe. My daughter's face flashed in my mind again. Small, bruised, broken, and rage burned through the exhaustion like fire through dry wood. We have everything we need, Marcus said quietly. Witnesses, forensic proof, a history of violence. It's all here. I nodded slowly, my eyes locked on the stack of evidence between us. No more NDAs, no more cover-ups, no more self-defense. Tomorrow we go public. I'll file the charges myself. Attempted murder, aggravated assault, child abuse, false statements. Every count we can legally attach. Marcus nodded. And Chief Hendress? I looked up, meeting his gaze. Tampering with evidence. Obstruction of justice. Abuse of power. He's going down too. The clock on the wall ticked past 3 a.m. I rubbed my temples, exhaustion tugging at me, but I refused to give in. My daughter was still unconscious in a hospital bed, and this was the only way I could fight for her now. The office was quiet except for the hum of the computers and the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights. Papers rustled, coffee, cups sat forgotten, and outside, the city slept under the illusion of peace. But peace was over. Marcus handed me a flash drive. This is it, he said. David Chin gave us the original file. I took it in my hands. The small silver object felt heavier than anything I'd ever held. Inside it was the truth. The unfiltered, unedited, undeniable truth. When I plugged it into my laptop, the video opened automatically. The colors flickered to life. Emma sitting cross-legged, drawing butterflies. Karen approaching, already furious. And then, everything. Every slap. Every scream. Every brutal second. I couldn't finish watching it. My hand flew to my mouth, and I had to look away. But the evidence was there. We had the unedited footage, and it showed everything. By the morning of the fourth day, I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was a weapon. The evidence we'd uncovered was irrefutable. The unedited ring footage, sworn witness statements, and a pattern of abuse stretching back years. Every file, every photo, every timestamp was a nail in the coffin of the Whitmores' carefully constructed empire of lies. Now it was time to bring it crashing down. And I wasn't going to do it quietly. When I walked into the DA's office that morning, the plan was already in motion. Marcus was coordinating with the state attorney general's oversight team, ensuring that no one could accuse me of bias. James was on the phone with media outlets, his voice calm but deliberate. Every major network had been tipped off. Local, state, national. By sunrise, they'd all know what was about to happen. This time, I told them, we make sure the world is watching. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd built their lie on doctored footage. Now, real cameras, real truth, would bring them down. By 5:30 a.m., the sky over Houston was still dark, the air thick with humidity. I stood outside the tactical van, the flashing red and blue lights painting the Whitmore mansion in ghostly colors. It was a palace of arrogance. White columns, manicured lawns, the kind of place built to impress judges and intimidate neighbors. I'd been here before, for charity events and political dinners. Never like this. Marcus handed me a bulletproof vest. You don't have to be out here, he said quietly. I do, I replied, fastening it. I want her to see my face when it happens. He nodded, understanding. Warrant signed. Everything's airtight. We move on your word. The team lined up at the front gate, their radios crackling softly. I looked up at the windows, lights flickering on upstairs, shadows moving. They knew we were here. Let's do it, I said. The tactical unit moved in, efficient and silent until the pounding on the door shattered the morning stillness. Houston Police Department. Karen Whitmore, we have a warrant for your arrest. Inside, movement. Muffled shouting. Then the door opened. Judge Richard Whitmore stood there in his bathrobe, his face purple with fury. This is outrageous, he barked. You have no jurisdiction here. I'll have your badge for this, Sarah. Step aside, Judge, I said evenly. You're obstructing an active warrant. You're out of line, he snapped. You can't prosecute this case. You're the victim's mother. Actually, I said, pulling a folded document from my jacket. I can, and I am. The Attorney General's Oversight Committee reviewed every step, every piece of evidence. They approved this warrant themselves. His eyes darted to the cameras now gathering at the gate. News vans, microphones, drones hovering above. For once, the Whitmores' power wasn't their armor. It was their spotlight. Karen appeared. Behind him, barefoot, her expensive silk robe tied too tight around her waist. Her face was pale, her eyes wide, not with guilt but with disbelief. The look of someone realizing too late that the rules no longer bent in her favor. Karen Whitmore, Marcus said, stepping forward, reading from the warrant, you are under arrest for the attempted murder of a minor, aggravated assault, child abuse, and filing false statements with law enforcement. You have the right to remain silent. This is insane, she interrupted, her voice cracking. I was defending myself. That child attacked me. I stepped forward before Marcus could finish. That child, I said, my voice cold and steady, is 5 years old. She weighs 38 pounds. And I've seen the video, Karen. I watched you beat her until she stopped moving. I listened to her scream for her mother. Karen flinched like I'd struck her. You don't understand. No, I cut in. You don't. You think power protects you. You think your husband's bench, your brother's badge, your title in some petty neighborhood committee makes you untouchable. But none of that matters now. Behind me, cameras clicked. The reporters whispered furiously into their mics, narrating history in real time. The image of Karen Whitmore, the woman who ruled Riverside Gardens with fear, Standing on her front porch in handcuffs was going to be the lead story on every channel by noon. Marcus finished reading her rights, his voice steady. Do you understand these rights, as they've been read to you? Karen's lip trembled. I want my lawyer. Of course, I said quietly. You have that right. She turned to me then, and for just a moment the mask cracked. Beneath the arrogance, beneath the entitlement, there was something almost human. Fear, maybe regret, maybe just the dawning realization that she wasn't getting away this time. As the officers led her past the cameras, she glanced back one last time. You're doing this for revenge, she hissed. No, I said. I'm doing it for justice. Judge Whitmore shouted something behind us about appeals and corruption, but no one listened. The scene had taken on a life of its own. Helicopters circled overhead. Reporters shouted questions. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, phones held high, recording what they never thought they'd see. Karen was placed in the back of the patrol car, her hands cuffed, her face pale in the flashing lights. For a long moment, I just stood there, watching as the door closed behind her. Marcus came up beside me. You did it, he said quietly. I shook my head. Not yet. He frowned. What do you mean? I looked toward the horizon, where the first golden light of dawn began to touch the rooftops. Justice isn't the arrest, I said softly. Justice is the verdict. He nodded slowly. As the convoy pulled away, carrying Karen toward a future she couldn't buy or bully her way out of, I finally allowed myself a breath I hadn't taken since that terrible day. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was the first step. Not justice yet, but a start. The day after Karen Whitmore's arrest, the hospital felt different. The halls were quieter, the air somehow lighter, as if the building itself knew that justice had finally begun to turn. But in Emma's room, time still stood still. The steady rhythm of the heart monitor echoed in my chest, each beep a fragile thread holding my world together. I hadn't left her side in days. My mother brought me coffee and reminded me to eat, but nothing tasted like anything. Every breath Emma took was my focus. Every flicker on the monitor sent a wave of panic through me. I'd memorized every sound the machines made, the soft hiss of oxygen, the faint hum of the IV pump. They were her lifelines, and by extension, mine. That morning, Dr. Patel entered quietly, clipboard in hand, eyes kind but cautious. Sarah, he said softly, her vitals are improving. The swelling around her brain is going down. She's responding to stimuli. I turned so fast the chair squealed against the floor. What does that mean? It means, he said, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth, that she might wake up soon. The words didn't register right away. Might wake up. They sounded too fragile to touch. Like glass that could shatter if I believed in it too much. But as the day wore on, the beeping steadied. Her breathing evened out. And then at 6:12 that evening, her fingers moved. It was the smallest thing. A faint twitch against my palm, but it felt like a lightning strike. I froze, barely daring to breathe. Emma! My voice cracked on her name. Baby, can you hear me? Her eyelids fluttered. Once, twice. Then slowly they opened. Her eyes, those wide honey-brown eyes I'd thought I might never see again, blinked against the harsh hospital light. For a second, she looked confused, lost between dreams and reality. Then her gaze found me. Mommy! The sound of that word broke me. I pressed my forehead against her hand, my tears spilling onto the bedsheet. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Her voice was barely a whisper, slurred and fragile. It hurts. I know, I said, brushing her hair back carefully, mindful of the bandages. You're safe now, sweetheart. You're in the hospital. The doctors are taking care of you. Her eyes darted around the room, unfocused, frightened. Where's the lady? My throat tightened. She's gone, Emma. She can't hurt you anymore. But the memory was already clawing its way back into her mind. Her lip trembled and her small hand clenched weakly in mine. She hit me, she whispered. She was mad 'cause I was drawing butterflies. I said sorry, but she didn't stop. Every word cut deeper than the last. I wanted to tell her to stop remembering, to rest, to let the darkness take her back until the pain faded. But I also knew she needed to say it, to release it, to begin healing. She hurt me, Mommy. Her voice cracked, trembling between sobs and gasps. The mean lady hurt me. I swallowed hard, forcing my own tears down. I know, sweetheart. I whispered, my voice steady for her sake. But she can't hurt you anymore. Mommy made sure of it. She looked at me then, really looked, her small brow furrowing. You stopped her? Yes, I said, squeezing her hand gently. Mommy stopped her. She's gone now. Forever. Her breathing slowed, her eyes fluttering again as exhaustion pulled at her. You're my hero, she murmured, words barely audible through the oxygen mask. A sound escaped me, a mix of a sob and a laugh. No, baby, you're mine. Dr. Patel returned a few minutes later, smiling when he saw her awake. He checked her vitals, adjusted the IV, then leaned toward me. She's stable, he said quietly, but she'll need time, both physically and emotionally. This kind of trauma, it leaves scars you can't see. I nodded, though I couldn't look away from Emma. We'll face it together. He gave a small nod of respect. I don't doubt that. When he left, the room fell silent again except for the hum of the machines. The setting sun filtered through the blinds, casting golden stripes across Emma's bed. She looked so small in that light, her face pale but peaceful for the first time in days. I brushed my fingers through her hair, tracing the faint line where the bandages met skin. I thought of all the mothers I'd met over the years, the ones who came to court seeking justice for their children. I'd fought for them, believed in them. But now I understood something deeper. Justice isn't abstract. It's breathing in that hospital bed. It's the sound of your child saying mommy again. Emma stirred slightly, her hand tightening around mine. Her voice, soft and trembling, broke the silence. The mean lady hurt me. I bent close, pressing my lips to her forehead. I know, sweetheart, I whispered, my voice shaking but sure. But she can't hurt you anymore. 3 weeks later, the courthouse was unrecognizable. Crowds packed the marble steps, reporters jostling for position beneath the glare of camera lights. The trial of the year, they called it. The case that shattered the illusion of privilege in Riverside Gardens. The air buzzed with tension, the kind that hums just before lightning strikes. Inside every seat was filled, journalists, activists, parents clutching their children's hands tighter than usual. The people had come to see justice either served or denied. When I entered the courtroom, the sound shifted. A hush rippled through the room. To them, I wasn't just the prosecutor, I was the mother. The woman whose daughter lay in a coma because of a petty power-drunk neighbor. Some looked at me with admiration, others with pity, but I didn't care. I wasn't there for sympathy, I was there for Emma. Across the aisle, Karen Whitmore sat at the defense table. Gone were the designer robes and smug arrogance. In their place, a conservative navy suit, pale makeup, and a carefully crafted expression of frailty. Her attorney, Martin Sayers, an expensive name with a reputation for twisting truth, whispered something in her ear. She nodded, eyes downcast, playing the role of the misunderstood victim. Judge Patricia Martinez presided, a visiting judge from Dallas known for her integrity. No ties to the Whitmores, no debts to their influence. A clean slate. When she called the room to order, even the reporters stopped typing. Court is now in session for the case of the people of the state of Texas versus Karen Whitmore, she said. Charged with attempted murder, aggravated assault, and child abuse. I rose slowly, feeling the weight of every gaze on me. My palms were steady. My voice was clear. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I began. You've probably seen the video. You've watched as a grown woman. 45 years old, wife of a judge, president of a homeowners association, beat a 5-year-old child until she lost consciousness. Gasps rippled through the room. Karen's attorney shifted uneasily. I continued, each word deliberate. You've heard the screams. You've seen the terror. You've watched her punch, kick, and slam that child's head against the concrete over and over until she stopped moving. And for what? I reached into the evidence folder and held up a photograph. This, I said, walking toward the jury. The photo showed Emma, smiling wide, holding up a chalk drawing of a butterfly. This is Emma Morrison, 5 years old. She loved pancakes, sidewalk chalk, and making people smile. On the morning of June 10th, she was outside her home drawing butterflies. Then I held up the second photo, the one that had haunted me every night. Emma in the ICU, face swollen, tubes snaking from her nose and mouth, her small body covered in bruises. 6 hours later, this was Emma Morrison. Multiple skull fractures, broken ribs, a shattered arm, brain trauma, a ventilator keeping her alive. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone in the back began to cry quietly. I set both photos on the evidence table, innocence beside horror, and looked directly at the jury. The defense will claim self-defense, I said. They'll tell you Emma attacked first, that a 5-year-old child somehow posed a threat to a grown woman. They'll talk about HOA rules and property values, about respect for authority and following the law. I paused, letting the silence stretch. But you've seen the video. You know that's a lie. I turned toward Karen, whose face was pale and rigid. This case isn't about chalk drawings. It's about power. The kind that makes people believe they can hurt others and get away with it. The kind that blinds them to humanity. I took a breath and faced the jury once more. The people of Texas are not here for revenge. We are here for justice. For Emma. For every child who's been told that their pain doesn't matter. For every parent who's been silenced by power. Today, the truth will speak for itself. As I sat down, Martin Sears rose, buttoning his tailored jacket. His voice was calm, rehearsed, soothing. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, gesturing toward his client, is not a monster. She is a community servant, a woman who made a tragic mistake while defending herself from a violent outburst. A few heads in the gallery shook in disbelief, but I didn't interrupt. Let him speak. Let him paint his fiction, because when the evidence came out, his words would burn away like fog in sunlight. The jury shifted, uneasy, as the first piece of footage cued on the courtroom monitor. The judge looked toward me. Ms. Morrison, you may proceed. I nodded, pressing play. The screen flickered, and the sound of Emma's laughter filled the courtroom, followed by the sharp, chilling voice that had haunted me since that day. Karen Whitmore's. The defense would claim self-defense, but they'd just seen the video. The courtroom went still as the screen flickered to life. Even after watching it a dozen times in the privacy of my office, I wasn't prepared for what followed. The audio filled the room, a child's soft humming, the scrape of chalk against concrete, then a sharp, venomous voice breaking the calm like a whip. Do you know how much this sidewalk costs? Karen's voice sneered from the speakers. Gasps echoed from the gallery as the video played on. Emma's small frame flinched backward, her voice trembling. I'm sorry, I'll clean it. Then came the first slap. The sound, sharp and hollow, cracked through the courtroom like lightning. No one spoke. No one moved. The video didn't cut away this time. Every second played in unedited, merciless clarity. Karen's hand grabbing Emma's hair. The punches, the kicks, the sound of my daughter's cries. Thin, terrified, pleading for help. On screen, I appeared in the background, running. Too far away, too late. The moment I reached her, the final blow, Emma's small body went limp, hitting the ground with a sound that still haunts my dreams. The courtroom fell into a suffocating silence broken only by the muffled sobs of strangers. One juror covered her mouth, tears streaking her face. Another man shook his head, muttering, "Dear God." Even Judge Martinez, the embodiment of composure, looked down briefly, her jaw tight. When the footage ended, the silence was heavier than any sound could have been. The prosecution calls David Chin to the stand, I said softly. David, the homeowner who'd provided the original footage, spoke clearly, his voice trembling only once. That's the full video, he said. Chief Hendris took my camera's SD card, said it was evidence, and gave it back missing entire segments. What you just saw, he didn't want anyone to see that. Next came the joggers. Their testimony matched the video exactly. Karen attacking, Emma begging, me running from the house. They'd tried to intervene, but Karen threatened to have them arrested. Finally, Dr. Patel took the stand. His tone was calm but devastatingly clinical. The injuries required repeated, forceful blows, he said. We're not talking about a fall. These fractures came from a sustained assault. The victim's ribs were broken in multiple places. This was deliberate. It's a miracle she survived. Karen's attorney, Martin Sears, looked defeated. His questions were half-hearted, his arguments crumbling under the weight of evidence too real to spin. When Karen finally took the stand, her composure shattered. Her voice cracked, her story unraveled. I panicked, she sobbed, but even as she spoke, the jury avoided her eyes. I didn't need to say much in closing. The video had spoken for me. No adult has the right to beat a child, I told them simply. Not for chalk, not for rules, not for anything. Then silence. The jury was dismissed. They filed out of the room at Montreux, 3:10 p.m. At 4:40, the bailiff opened the door again. 90 minutes. That's all it took. The jury had returned. 2 weeks later, the courtroom was full again. Reporters lined the aisles, families held hands, and the air felt charged with something more than anticipation. It was accountability. The jury had spoken. Now it was time for the final reckoning. Karen Whitmore sat at the defense table, pale and trembling, her once perfect composure gone. Her husband, Judge Richard Whitmore, occupied the back row, his career in shambles. The State Ethics Committee had already opened investigations into his sealed cases. Chief Hendris had been suspended, facing his own charges for evidence tampering. The empire they'd built on arrogance was collapsing brick by brick. When the clerk called for sentencing statements, I stood, clutching a folded piece of paper. It wasn't my words that mattered most. It was Emma's. Your Honor, I began, my voice steady but trembling at the edges. My daughter wanted to say something. Judge Martinez nodded solemnly. I unfolded the paper, written in careful, uneven letters. Dear Judge, I read aloud. My name is Emma and I'm 5.5. The mean lady hurt me really bad. I was just drawing butterflies. She hit me and kicked me, and I went to sleep for a long time. I still have bad dreams. But Mommy says I'm brave. I just want to be safe. Love, Emma. The courtroom was silent. Not even the hum of cameras dared to intrude. I could see tears in the eyes of strangers. Then I spoke for myself. Your Honor, I stand before you as a prosecutor and as a mother. I've seen justice from both sides of the table, but nothing compares to watching your child fight for her life because someone believed their power placed them above consequence. Karen Whitmore didn't lose control. She exercised it, with cruelty, with precision, and without remorse. I'm asking for the maximum sentence. Not for revenge, but because justice must mean something. For Emma. For every victim who never got to see their abuser held accountable. Judge Martinez removed her glasses, her voice firm but heavy. Mrs. Whitmore, in 30 years on the bench, I have never seen such deliberate violence toward a child. You manipulated your power, your connections, and the law itself to hide your cruelty. No more. She paused. I hereby sentence you to life in prison for attempted murder, 20 years for aggravated assault, and 10 years for child abuse, served consecutively. You will be eligible for parole in 40 years. Karen's knees buckled as the words hit. The sound of the gavel echoed through the courtroom. Final. Absolute. Karen Whitmore would spend the rest of her life in prison. 5 years later, the sun was warm again. Not the kind that burned, but the kind that healed. Emma was 10 now, taller, stronger, with only faint scars beneath her hairline, and a confidence that seemed to glow from within. The limp, was gone. The nightmares rare. Therapy had given her tools, and time had given her peace. But what truly healed her was something much simpler. Childhood, restored one chalk drawing at a time. That afternoon, we were at a small park in a new neighborhood. No HOA presidents, no manicured tyranny, just laughter, birds, and freedom. I watched as Emma crouched on the pavement, her chalk-stained fingers moving across the concrete with quiet focus. Bright colors bloomed beneath her hands, flowers, sunshine, and in the center, a butterfly. She glanced up and smiled. "Look, Mommy, I made one for you." The sight nearly undid me. For a moment, I was back on that terrible day. Chalk dust, screams, blood. But the memory no longer had claws. It had become part of the story that made her who she was. I knelt beside her, my voice soft. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Just like you." She grinned, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Do you think butterflies remember when they were caterpillars?" I smiled, tears stinging my eyes. "Maybe, but I think they're too busy flying to care." She laughed, light and free, and turned back to her art. Across the pavement, another little girl joined her, their giggles weaving together into something pure. I stood there, letting the sound wash over me. Karen Whitmore was gone, locked away for life. Her husband disbarred, her brother stripped of his badge. The system they'd built to protect themselves had finally crumbled under the weight of truth. Justice hadn't erased the pain, but it had carved out something stronger in its place: resilience. As Emma traced the wings of another butterfly, I understood the lesson that had cost so much to learn. Power fades, titles vanish, but love, especially a mother's love, endures. A mother's love is more powerful than any position, privilege, or protection money can buy. Have you ever seen power abused like this? Tell me your story below. What would you have done if it were your child?